Hey everyone, welcome back to Speak Easy, the podcast where we help you sound more natural, more confident, and more fluent in everyday English. I'm your host, Marcus, and today we have a fantastic topic that literally every English speaker talks about every single day: the weather. And joining me today is Sophie, an English language coach who has been helping learners from all over the world for over 10 years. Sophie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Marcus. I'm really excited to be here. And you're absolutely right. Weather is one of those topics that comes up constantly in English conversation. Whether you're chatting with a coworker, making small talk at a bus stop, or catching up with a friend, it's unavoidable. And honestly, it's a beautiful entry point into natural English.
Exactly. And I think a lot of learners actually underestimate how important this topic is. They think, oh, it's just the weather. How complicated can it be? But then they find themselves in a real conversation and they freeze up because they only know how to say, it is sunny today. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the most common things I hear from my students. They know the basics, sunny, rainy, cloudy, but when a native speaker says something like, it's absolutely bitter out there today, isn't it? They'd just go completely blank, and that's totally understandable. There's so much vocabulary, so many expressions, and so many cultural nuances around talking about weather in English.
So let's break it all down today. We're going to go through vocabulary, common phrases, idioms, small talk tips, the whole package. Let's start with the basics, Sophie. What are the most fundamental weather words that every learner needs to know?
Great place to start. So the core weather words are what I like to call the big 8. You've got sunny, cloudy, rainy, windy, snowy, foggy, stormy, and humid. Now, every learner probably knows most of those, but what makes you sound more natural is not just knowing the word, it's knowing how to use it in a full sentence the way a native speaker would. So instead of saying, today is sunny, a native speaker would say, it's a beautiful sunny day out there, or the sun is really out in full force today.
Oh, I love that. The sun is out in full force. That already sounds so much more natural. Can you give us a few more examples like that? Taking a basic word and turning it into something a native speaker would actually say?
Of course. Let's take rainy. A beginner might say, it is raining today. That's correct, but it's a bit flat. A native speaker might say, it's pouring out there. I got absolutely soaked just walking from my car. Or they might say, it's been drizzling all morning. That kind of gray, miserable drizzle that just ruins your mood. See how much more vivid and expressive that is?
Yes, and I noticed you used two different words there, pouring and drizzling. Can you explain the difference? Because I think a lot of learners just use raining for everything.
Yes, this is so important. In English, we have a really rich vocabulary for different types of rain, and using the right word makes a huge difference. So drizzling is very light rain, almost like a mist. You might not even bother opening your umbrella. Then there's just plain raining, which is your average, moderate rainfall. Then pouring means it's raining very heavily, like buckets of water coming down. And then we have torrential rain, which is even more extreme, the kind of rain that causes flooding. Natives also say things like it's chucking it down in British English, which means it's raining extremely hard.
Oh, wow, chucking it down. I love that one. So, for our listeners, if you're learning British English specifically, that's a phrase you'll definitely hear. Now, Sophie, let's talk about temperature. What vocabulary should learners know there?
Temperature is another area where learners tend to keep it very simple, just hot or cold. And those are fine, but English has so many wonderful gradations. On the cold end, you have words like chilly, cool, cold, freezing, and Arctic. Each one is progressively colder. Chilly is like, you might want to grab a light jacket. Freezing means it's genuinely very cold, maybe below 0. And Arctic is an exaggeration we use when it's absolutely brutal outside.
And on the hot end,
On the hot end, you have warm, hot, sweltering, boiling, and scorching. Warm is pleasant, like a lovely spring afternoon. Hot is more intense. Sweltering and boiling and scorching are all ways of saying it's absolutely uncomfortably intensely hot. You'd say, it's absolutely scorching out there today. I can barely breathe. And of course, we also have humid, which describes that sticky, heavy feeling when there's a lot of moisture in the air. Many learners confuse hot and humid, so it's worth remembering humid is about moisture, not just temperature.
That's such a useful distinction. Now, let's move into something I know our listeners are going to love, weather idioms and expressions, because this is where English gets really creative and a little bit wild, right?
Oh, this is my favorite part. English is absolutely full of weather-related idioms, and they pop up constantly in everyday speech. Let me give you some of the most common ones. The first one is under the weather. If someone says, I'm feeling a bit under the weather, it means they're feeling slightly ill or unwell. It has nothing to do with actual weather. It just means you're not feeling your best.
Right, and I think a lot of learners have heard that one before, but aren't always confident using it. So, for example, if a colleague emails you and says, I won't be in the office today, I'm feeling a bit under the weather, that means they're sick, probably just a mild cold or something like that.
Exactly. Now, another really common one is to weather the storm. This means to survive or get through a difficult situation. For example, the company really weathered the storm during the financial crisis. It's often used in business or personal contexts to describe resilience.
Oh, that's a powerful one. What else have you got?
Okay, here's a fun one. Every cloud has a silver lining. I'm sure many of our listeners have heard this one. It means that even in a bad or difficult situation, there is always something positive or hopeful to be found. So if a friend loses their job, you might say, well, every cloud has a silver lining. Maybe this is your chance to finally start that business you always dreamed about.
Beautiful. That's such an optimistic saying. What about it's raining cats and dogs? That one always confuses learners who haven't heard it before.
Yes, it's raining cats and dogs is probably one of the most famous English idioms in the world, and it simply means it's raining very heavily. The origin of it is actually debated. Nobody knows for sure where it came from, but it's been used for hundreds of years. So if someone says, I'm not going out in this weather, it's raining cats and dogs out there, they just mean the rain is absolutely pouring down.
Great. Now, let's shift to something really practical, small talk. Because in English-speaking cultures, small talk is almost like a social ritual, right? Especially in the UK.
Oh, completely. In the UK especially, talking about the weather is almost a national sport. It's the go-to conversation starter in almost any social situation. And the reason it works so well is because weather is something everyone shares. It's neutral, it's relatable, and it's always happening. There's no political controversy in saying, bit chilly today, isn't it?
So let's give our listeners some actual scripts, real phrases they can use to start a weather conversation, keep it going, and respond naturally. Let's start with openers.
Perfect. So here are some great conversation openers about weather. Number 1, lovely day, isn't it? This is a classic British opener on a nice day. Number 2, can you believe this weather we're having? This works for any extreme or unusual weather. Number 3, what a miserable day. I'm so ready for summer. This is more casual and expressive. Number 4, did you hear we're supposed to get snow this weekend? This is a great way to bring up a weather forecast. And number 5, I woke up this morning and I couldn't believe how cold it was.
I love these because they're not just statements. They invite the other person to respond. They keep the conversation going. Now, what about responses? How should learners respond when someone opens with a weather comment?
Yes, this is key. In English small talk, you generally want to agree, add something, and then maybe redirect or extend the conversation. So if someone says, lovely day, isn't it? You might respond with, absolutely gorgeous. I was just thinking I should head outside for a walk later. Or if someone says, it's freezing today, isn't it? You could say, tell me about it. I could barely feel my fingers walking from the car. I really need to get a better coat.
See, that response feels so natural and human. It's not just, yes, it is cold. There's a little story, a little personality in there.
Exactly. And that's what separates a robotic answer from a genuinely fluent one. Native speakers add little details, little complaints or observations. Weather small talk is almost like a mini bonding experience. We're all in it together, suffering through the cold or celebrating the sunshine.
Now, let's talk about weather forecasts, because learners often watch the news in English and they hear all kinds of technical weather language. What should they know?
Great point. Weather forecasts have their own specific vocabulary. You'll hear phrases like, there's a high chance of precipitation. Precipitation means any form of water falling from the sky, whether that's rain, snow, sleet, or hail. You'll hear temperatures will drop to around -5 overnight. So knowing how to talk about negative temperatures is important. You'll hear strong winds are expected with gusts of up to 60 miles per hour. A gust is a sudden, strong burst of wind. And you'll hear there's a weather warning in place for the eastern regions. A weather warning means conditions could be dangerous.
And what about seasons? How does weather vocabulary change across the 4 seasons?
Oh, lovely question. Each season has its own vocabulary and feel. In spring, we talk about things like mild temperatures, April showers, which refers to the rainy spells you often get in spring, and blooming or fresh air. There's a lovely phrase, there's a nip in the air, which means it's a little cold but refreshing. That's very much a spring or autumn feeling.
I love that. A nip in the air. So evocative.
In summer, the vocabulary gets warmer and more joyful. You'll hear blazing sunshine, heat wave, which is a prolonged period of very hot weather, humid, muggy, which means uncomfortably warm and damp. In autumn, or fall, as Americans say, we get crisp air, cool breezes, overcast skies, and patchy fog. And in winter, of course, you have frost, black ice, which is a very dangerous thin layer of ice on roads, blizzard, which is a heavy snowstorm, and wind chill, which means it feels even colder than the actual temperature because of the wind.
These are all so useful. Let's do a quick role play, Sophie. I want our listeners to hear what a real weather conversation sounds like. I'll pretend we're 2 colleagues bumping into each other in the office kitchen on a gray Monday morning. I'll start.
Perfect. Let's do it.
Morning, Sophie. Ugh, what a gray day out there. Did you have a good weekend at least?
Morning. Tell me about it. It was absolutely miserable all weekend, too. I had plans to go hiking on Saturday, and the rain just completely ruined it. I was so disappointed. How about you?
Oh no, what a shame. Yeah, we didn't do much either. Just stayed in, watched movies. Honestly, this kind of weather just makes you want to hibernate, doesn't it? They're saying it might brighten up by Wednesday, though.
Oh, fingers crossed. I'll believe it when I see it. The forecast has been so unreliable lately. But yeah, a bit of sunshine would really lift everyone's spirits. Right, I'd better get back to my desk. Stay warm.
You too. See you later.
And scene. See how naturally weather flowed through that whole conversation? We complained together, we showed sympathy, we talked about plans that were affected by the weather, and we ended on a hopeful note about better weather coming. That's a very typical English weather conversation.
That was perfect, Sophie. And listeners, I hope you noticed all the phrases we used in there. Tell me about it, ruined it, makes you want to hibernate, fingers crossed, I'll believe it when I see it. All of those are very common, very natural English expressions.
And fingers crossed is a really useful one. It means you're hoping for something good to happen. You can use it in so many situations beyond weather, too.
Absolutely. Now, Sophie, before we wrap up, let's give our listeners a quick summary, a kind of cheat sheet of the most important things we've covered today.
Love it. Okay, so here's your weather English cheat sheet. First, go beyond the basics. Don't just say hot or cold. Use words like sweltering, freezing, crisp, muggy, and blustery. Second, learn the rain vocabulary. Drizzle, pour, torrential rain, and in British English, chucking it down. Third, master a few key idioms. Under the weather, every cloud has a silver lining, weather the storm, and raining cats and dogs will take you very far. Fourth, use weather as small talk. It's a universal, neutral conversation opener, so don't be afraid to use it. And fifth, add personality to your responses. Include a small detail, a complaint, a little story. That's what makes you sound genuinely fluent.
That is such a fantastic summary, Sophie. You've really packed so much into this episode, and I know our listeners are going to replay this one multiple times. Before we go, do you have one final piece of advice for English learners who want to get more comfortable talking about weather?
Yes, my final piece of advice is this. Start a weather journal. Every single day, look outside, check the forecast, and write 3 to 5 sentences in English describing the weather. Use new vocabulary, use an idiom, describe how the weather makes you feel. Do this every day for a month, and I promise you, weather conversations in English will feel completely natural and effortless. Language learning is about building habits, and this is one of the most fun and easy habits you can build.
A weather journal. I absolutely love that idea. Simple, daily, and incredibly effective. Sophie, thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been such a rich and practical episode. Where can our listeners find you if they want to learn more from you?
Thank you so much for having me, Marcus. It's been a real pleasure. Listeners can find me on Instagram and YouTube under the name Sophie Speaks English, and I post free tips and lessons every week. I'd love to have you in my community.
Wonderful. And listeners, all of Sophie's links will be in the show notes below. Thank you so much for tuning in to Speak Easy today. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review, share it with a friend who's learning English, and we will be back next week with another fantastic topic. Until then, keep practicing, keep speaking, and whatever the weather is like where you are today, I hope it's a beautiful one. Take care, everyone.